That's it. Hold on. Really, the beginning, I think, of this this situation here at Berlin came back when, just by accident, in a newspaper that had been printed back in the late I think it was 1880s. There was a discussion that they were going to have a get-together of Union troops, and part of that was going to be they were going to refight the Battle of Berlin Heights, they called it. Well, that in itself was really a challenge because I had never heard of that, and this idea of the Battle of Berlin Heights. So anyway, the discussion about it over time really netted very little until back in 2002 and 3, when Bob began doing the research on his book, the John Hunt Morgan Raid of 1863. And Bob started running into some articles. I started running into some articles. And all of a sudden, some things began to gel about what this was about. But the one thing that was very, very, very peculiar was once we had just a basic outline, which was there was over 1,000 troops of Confederate and Union both, that it received no recognition. And by the chance, I was one of the coordinators on the Morgan's Raid trail, when it goes across the state. And I was a coordinator for Jackson County, and several of the others that are very interested and worked on this, I got to know them. One of them, Dave,
Mowry?
Yes. Dave and I, we meet quite a bit. Ed Sharp. There was just a lot of interfacing going on. Well, I put it to them one day, and I said, well, why isn't what occurred at Berlin important? And they said, well, it was nothing but a skirmish. And I said, well, how do you figure that, you know? And anyway, they said that's what the official record says. So, anyway, I really was not educated enough to challenge that. So over the next 4 or 5 years, things just began to come back and forth about this area right here. Finally, what happened was that I just got to the point, after looking and finding a bit here and a bit there, that, you know, there's something wrong here, because there were 2 different armies fighting. There was a cannonade here that took place. There was shooting. There were deaths. I mean, to me, that makes a battle. And when you're starting to talk over 1,000 men on each side, well, that skirmish just doesn't cut it. Well, nonetheless, though, it was still something that could not get any form of traction. That was until the past year, and that's when I got working on the idea of how can we get this recognized formally. And that comes into this, maybe you folks are familiar with it, the American Battlefield Protection Plan. That's a study that was done in 1991, started through 1994 in every state in the United States. Congress enacted it to research and make apparent which are battlefields within those given states. Well, when they went ahead, what they did is they went ahead and used, I'm sure some of you used the official records, was the ones done in the late 1800s. Yeah, you're right. If you look at those records, what happened at Berlin was called a skirmish, and there was nothing there to contest that. Well, just about 6 or 7 months ago, I went ahead and decided, by golly gosh, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a run for it anyway. So I contacted Columbus. We went ahead, we decided we were going to put in an application to have it included on the National Register of Historic Places. It's a tough thing to get involved with. And I found out immediately that there had been a study done by a gentleman in Kentucky, and it was this study, which was called a MPD, Multiple Property Document, 180 some pages. And what that document has, it goes ahead and deals with Morgan's Raid trail from where he began in Kentucky clear to where he ended at West Point, Ohio. And what made this different, and why, for instance, why if there isn't any more historic sites on the Morgan's raid is the fact that, I didn't know this, it was not until the Civil War was there such a thing as cavalry. So that was one of those things that when cavalry, they were always on the move. There wasn't any fixed areas. They were constantly moving, and that's one of the criteria that would shoot these different locations down. But we found out that this guy, this company in Kentucky has went ahead and he has worked on this, and it is being, right now, it's in the Kentucky legislature to be approved, and then in Indiana and Ohio. And after that happens, that document will become a part of anybody doing any form of a submittal for an actual battlefield site or something to be included on the National Register. So we've got high hopes, and it's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of paperwork, but we're confident of that. And that brings us to here, to the battle site itself. What we've sent in so far, where Bob left off in his discussion, was there was a county road now that came around and to the west of here, and that's where Morgan's men came. That's where they shelled the Union positions, and the Union positions, those gentlemen had come down from Chillicothe by train, and they got here between 1 and 3 in the morning at Hamden, Ohio, and marched down the railroad tracks. And when they got here to Berlin, this hillside is where they decided, this hillside here was where the most advantageous place was going to be to defend this. And they were going to stop Morgan from going here, going through to the east. And there was even one written account that says they thought he was going to go to the north to Hamden and burn the depot and the trains there. So that's what they were here for. Well, anyway, as it turns out, when he goes ahead, and make a long story short, the Confederates were concerned that the Union had artillery. So they stopped and they went ahead. They fired some shells, and they finally were determined the Union doesn't have any artillery here. So that's when they went ahead and mounted a charge. And they charged, they lined up across through there and went and swept up through this way. And as soon as the Union troops, and a lot of these were militia, saw this happening, they took off and went over the hill that way. That's why there's not a casualty on the Union side. Now on the Confederates, it's 4 to 12, something like that. That's what we can. And there are several of those men that are buried, we believe, in Wellston, where Wellston is now. And so we're doing a lot of research. There was one Confederate wounded that a family here in Berlin took in, and that man was kept by them for a month until he was healed up enough he could go ahead and be moved to prison. And anyway, the provost marshal, there was one here then, came and arrested him and took him to Cincinnati, to a facility down there. But we're looking right now through the National Register, National Archives, are looking for, we're trying to find out, see if that arrest record is still present. So that's basically what happened here. The rebels went ahead after the battle was over. They routed the Union. They went ahead and continued on their way and headed into Wilkesville. And the rest of it, is kind of goes on to Buffington Island and so forth. But where this is at now is we have had a couple of back and forths with submitting answers to questions that they have, and there's a lot of it we just simply can't do until this report, this MPD, is approved, which should be sometime a little after the first of the year. But once that gets going, we're going to really tackle this hard to get this on the National Register. One thing that our organization that we have, the Berlin Crossroads, Berlin Heights Battlefield Association we formed, is one thing we did is we have a sign here, which maybe I'll get that in a minute and bring that around so you can see it. We're getting ready to erect that. They're getting the sign, the post made, and the framework for it, and it'll be mounted right close to this one down here. These are nice, but you can't see them. You know, if you don't know where they're at, they're just kind of hard to tell anything about them. But and then you're aware of the Confederate monument that was installed out here at Salem Cemetery to the dead Confederates that happened in that battle. So we think that the thing is, what this is going to mean also, if we can get this approved, what it's going to mean then is that this was the first battle fought in the Civil War. So that's another little, you know.
In 1863.
That's the first one in Ohio, period.
1863, there was one earlier.
Not a battle. No. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think Jenkins didn't he raid Ohio, but it wasn't much of a battle, I don't think.
You thought when he crossed the river and just came over in the afternoon and crossed over?
Yeah, there was one at the river and also one at Cincinnati in 1862.
No. It was a threat, but it was not a battle.
So we're in the middle of the battle right here.
Right here. Yeah.
And you said that Keenan Hill is over here somewhere?
Actually, yes, looking straight away. It's that hillside, you're looking right over through there.
Wooded hillside?
Yeah.
Which is where Morgan's artillery would have been placed.
There's a question of whether that was too far, and whether it was on the hill, or they came around that county road up to this road here and set it up right there. It's a lot closer.
Okay. He would have had two pieces?
Well, yes, he had, well, maybe three. He had two 3-inch ferrets with him. Okay. And then they went ahead and they took a cannon that they went ahead and won over at the Battle of Corrington. There was a Union, they had to have one there, and they loaded it and brought it with them.